a person's impression of that company, whereas they might have thought like, oh, here's our thing, and our thing might be our big box store, and then we have these supporting things that might get some attention, might not, but the really key thing is that store. And now it's not, no, any given touch point, whatever channel that is in, whether it's a store or it's a mobile phone, is forming their overall experience. And I think that customer experience, I think on that kind of retail standpoint, customer experience has started to think in a service design mentality. And then obviously a lot of traditional services that maybe should have service design methodologies or thinking applied to them are realizing they need that because of the introduction of those multiple channels now. So I think that's really what's happening. I mean, I see service design, on the one side from service design, it's become part of the conversation because of the adoption. And then on the kind of the digital product design side, things that looked like products are now looking more like services, and you need a new set of methodology. And that includes the journey mapping. It includes things like service blueprints, something called ecosystem mapping, where you're not really mapping the journey yet, but you're just trying to get a discovery of like what's involved, like what people are involved, what places are involved. And so I think there is sort of this integrating of the lines are getting blurred between things that might be user experience design, might be marketing, might be service design, because we're sort of swapping methodologies because we're realizing that the customer or the end user isn't thinking in terms of marketing or a service or a product. They're thinking in terms of this overall experience, and they're influenced by the marketing. They're influenced by the way the sort of analog connected touch points are, and they're influenced by the technology that also might support that. And so I do think it's an interesting time where there's a lot of things being formed because we're all of a sudden realizing, you said it already, I think the key word is that it's going to be a cross-disciplinary approach to understanding that. I think that's what's going to be key.
I know, but it's also really exciting because you know, this collaboration that perhaps hasn't happened before. I guess the only thing that I'm thinking is when it's in a larger company, that facilitation of that process could be tricky with the volumes of people involved, you know, because there's personalities and agendas, and I suppose that's why if you've got the customer at the centre, I guess that should sort of resonate with everyone or get them on the same sort of plane.
Yeah, you hope that what this does is as a conversation item is get everyone on the same page, looking at that same North Star. So that helps, like if there are those sort of differences or kind of agendas, if you have something that people buy into the idea that they can refer to that, then that sort of should settle it. You know, that should be it. It's hard, and I don't imply that just doing an experience map kind of solves some of those greater issues of how those silos are and how the organization embraces the idea of the customer being at the center of those of the experience that you're designing for or creating to support. But hopefully, if you get that buy-in and you evangelize that idea, you have something that helps settle some of those, you know, conflicting differences. Like, well, yeah, but what we know is this is our, you know, we're looking to support this. So what's the best way to support this? And that ideally that helps. But it's not a magic pill, obviously, but hopefully it's something that creates around which conversations can be created for a shared understanding.
Because in my mind, I guess I'm thinking about companies that naturally have a culture of community. You know, they like one another. They get along. They're fans of the company before they start. Employees are advocates before they start. As opposed to somebody sending down an agenda, we need to be more customer-centric, let's do this customer mapping. But we don't really, you know, it's just something that we have to do. And I just wonder how much the culture that you walk into dictates how that process, whether it's just lip service or whether actually it is embraced because they truly believe that this is how much that adoption needs to happen at the top to actually make that flow down.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's that top down versus bottom up. We've seen it's a harder slog when we have people fight, kind of in a sense, fighting the good fight, and who have somehow maybe carved out some budget at that sort of middle level, boots on the ground level, such as like middle managers, product managers, project managers, to do something like this. Their main goal often isn't necessarily to get immediate effects on their product or service. It's to champion something that they can start to take up throughout the organization so that they can get some type of buy-in at a higher level. It happens much quicker when an organization does have a more top-down mandate. So they might have, and especially if they create, and you see this a lot when a lot of retailers, from retailers now creating customer experience groups that are essentially channel agnostic that are meant to make all that work together seamlessly. Some of them have been created but don't necessarily have them and have a certain mandate, but haven't necessarily been empowered to influence the rest of the organization. And those have a harder, they're kind of, in a sense, they've been created to create this lip service towards a more unified experience for the customer and breaking down some of those silos. But they can do some stuff. They can produce some artifacts like customer experience maps and get those circulated around. But they don't have the necessarily the power to make them actionable. Where you see some success is where these customer experience groups, and they might be called different things in different organizations, but these customer experience groups actually have not just a mandate, but are empowered to be a catalyst where they can actually affect change within the organization. They are a bit more umbrella or in their nature where they can then influence the different groups or different silos and have, in a sense, the authority to do so, although you don't want to think of it in that sense. So ideally, organizations have a better set of systems in place that doesn't make it feel like an authority or a dictating, but they are actually enabled to take those things that they're doing, service blueprints, customer journey maps, any kind of customer insights, and make them actionable that will affect the organization. And so it is hard. It is hard, I think, and the larger the organization and the more complicated the organization, the harder and longer it takes.
Cool. So what's got you excited at the moment? What are you working on or reading, or what's your world look like?
Yeah, so, I mean, my passion area is around kind of the new proliferation of a lot of services that are specifically designed around our behaviors and usually trying to get positive outcomes. And I think those services are I think, an interesting one to sort of map and think about how they're promoted and marketed to people. And that's the shortcut sort of term for that is behavior design, or designing for behavior change. And it has existed forever, the idea of like smoking cessation programs or weight loss programs. But again, similar to how service design has become relevant, a lot of these things empowered by technology, empowered by like the ubiquity of sensors and mobility, all of a sudden anything that can be connected will be connected. Like you can buy a basketball now with a sensor in it, so you can measure the intensity of your dribble and your technique. We see that with the obvious examples around things like financial applications that allow you to link your bank accounts and set goals and manage your debt. Nike and other things that allow you to track your exercise activities. We have Fitbits and bracelets now that kind of keep everything from your perspiration to your heart rate and all that stuff. And there's this whole slew of behaviors that, we've gone from, things that are managing ourselves or managing our stuff, like my email and my music and my photos, to managing me and my behaviors. And I think that's a thing that has been evolving over the past 2 or 3 years, and is something that's really interesting me, and how new products and services are marketed around the idea of what I call behavior change as value proposition. The value proposition isn't something that you're going to get. The value you receive is the change in your behaviors and the positive outcomes from that. And I think that's been a really interesting space to track.
No, it sounds fantastic, and I agree. I think that's the crux of it. But, yeah. So when are you likely to write a book, Chris? Because we need this stuff.
We'll see. I have a proposal together, and I'm talking to a couple publishers about that. And so my goal, book publishing can be a bit of an arduous process. And so unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to say that something could happen in 2 months where there's a book out. But my goal would be maybe at the end of this year or the first thing in 2014 that there might be something out there. It is something I'm working on, and I get that question asked a lot, and I'm very appreciative that there seems to be some support for something like that.
Yeah, well, look, I really appreciate your viewpoint and all your slide shares and all your information. I'll put some links on this podcast because
appreciate that.
You're a great thought leader in the space, and it really resonated with me, and I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on, and appreciate the kind words, and it's been fun to chat about.
Well, thanks.